Good afternoon, everyone. I am Carlise, your host. I am the owner of A Peace of Mind and the Chakra Box. I am your grief and trauma coach, along with your shadow work guide. Today in the shadow box, we have Maggie Boillot. Maggie is a speaker and a podcaster. She is also a mentor. She believes in trusting and wants to get you to know everything, trusting the unknown and rewriting your story. So, Maggie, go ahead and give us some more information and kind of bring us into your world.
Yes. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to kind of dive into all of this with you. And really, truly, my work surrounds from my own personal experience of being in a toxic relationship for over a decade. And really, truly, at that point in my life, I had absolutely no idea what strength, courage, or trust really meant. And I ended up having to leave that part of my life completely behind to start over and rewrite my story, like you mentioned. And so my work and my message is very simple and clear. You have to be able to trust yourself enough to have the courageous next best step to build strength along the way as you're recreating the life that you truly deserve and desire. And it's pretty much that simple. I don't like to overcomplicate it because all of our stories and all of our messes are uniquely ours. But the way that we can move forward and go past and start stepping into a new version of ourselves is very similar. And it's all leading from kind of that internal person, being able to trust yourself and, not know what's going to be right on those other side of those steps, but just knowing that if you're staying in a stuck and unfulfilling life, relationship, work environment, all different kinds of things, you're going to stay there unless you just make one decision to totally make the power shift out of your life to be able to say, I want a different life.
Yeah, so it's taking that leap of faith and
Yes.
believing that you could do it and knowing that there's something on the other side. And since you have decided to take that leap of faith, it's like, go ahead and trust yourself that you will know what to do on that other side as it comes for you, right? So I love the way that that trust is your number one thing when it comes to self. Because when you are starting to rewrite your story, rewrite is is in front of right for a reason, because you are coming into something that is unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. And now you get to I always like to speak about the canvas. Now you have an empty canvas and you get to put on it whatever you want to put on it. And you get to give and take and put sections and rooms in there that you want, and you get to totally rewrite how you want your story to go. I love that. So your life kind of took a big shift, and I want you to tell us, when did your story start to shift?
Yeah, so my story shifted about 5 years ago when I was literally a few days shy of turning 35. And I think that's a pivotal moment in a lot of people's lives where you almost think it's too late. I'm too old. I'm too this. And so for me, my ultimate shift in my life happened at 35 years old.
Okay. And what was the surrounding circumstances?
Surrounding circumstances were a lot. I think for me, there was so many layers to my story and so many layers to the ability to understand what I was allowing. So what I was going through or putting myself through or allowing myself to stay in was a very unfulfilling, loveless, manipulative, I guess we could say marriage. We were together for 10 years. I had literally tied my entire identity to this one person. And then also, not only did I have this identity with this person, but I had also built a company with this person. And so Maggie was Palango Maggie, or Maggie was this person who was attached to this part of this world. And there was so many circumstances in that time of my life where I loved being on stage and leading and motivating and inspiring people to show up and live a great life. But on the other side of all of that, there was the darkness, the sadness, the losing my self-worth, losing myself respect for myself, losing all of my confidence and everything. So there were so many layers to that part of that story. But I think the one that sticks out to me the most is that I was saying things as what I said, even like, oh, I'm too old. This is what I chose. It is what it is. It's good as it gets. You know, the things we like to try to tell ourselves. And I ultimately believe that those were the lies that I had told myself for far too long, that there was absolutely no trust even in myself.
Yeah. And, when we had talked previous, we kind of talked about some things that were going on prior to you getting into that relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's probably one of the things that kept you in the relationship and just, kind of kept you in that hole, because you were just reacting from and living in from what you knew. And when we talk about that, you do get into situations where you learn a lot about yourself, but then you realize you've been learning about yourself since you were a child. You've been learning about yourself since you had those relationships with mom and dad and with family and through school. And so when we put ourselves under someone else's authority and allow them to have that sort of power over us, that speaks to what we already believed in ourselves, what we were conditioned to believe in ourselves. Let's go back a little bit further and tell me your perspective on why you even found yourself in that particular relationship.
I think my perspective around that is that I never really truly felt enough. I didn't really know maybe who I even was. I think the perspective is that I wanted to show up in the world of who I was, and I really truly didn't even know who I was, but I knew what I wanted. But it was something that I think for a long time of my life, I never felt the validation. I didn't feel proud of myself. I was a lot of things where I felt like I was searching for that from someone else.
Yeah.
And so my perspective about that is that it probably came from other parts of my life where I saw certain things in my parents' marriage. I saw certain things that were happening even around me in society that was like, well, what is, you have these questions that start to arise when you start to look at the perspectives. Yeah. And then you're kind of led to make choices, even though you're not really sure if that's a good choice, a bad choice, whatever the choice may be. I think for me, it was just that I had a lot of things in my childhood I felt like didn't really make a difference or an impact in the moment. Yeah. But going into a relationship or going into this new version of not a child Maggie, but an adult Maggie, there was a lot of questions.
Yeah, but that child Maggie always shows up in adult Maggie until mm-hmm. Maggie gets to know herself, right? And that's the part that we end up fighting with ourselves on, until we get to that point where we're like, okay, something has to change, because I'm not happy in this conditioning of myself, but I didn't know how to show up or how to request or require other people to show up for me. Mm. And so here you were in this relationship, and we're going to call him Mr. Perfect. So go ahead and walk us through some of this relationship. And I know that it's kind of touchy, and I know it's kind of deep, but I want you to walk us through so we can really understand how you understood that you needed to come out of the other side.
Yeah. So when I was 24 years old, I was, like I had mentioned, I was kind of just like any 24-year-old, you're trying to just find your way. You're trying to, all the things are happening. And I had actually just come off of a DUI as well. And I think that's another part of the story as well. But with that being said, I was in a very vulnerable state of mind where I just wanted to feel seen, or I wanted to feel that something from somebody. And it was an instant, I went to a workout class Mr. Perfect kind of was there. And it was one of those things where I really didn't know anything. I just was open, I'm open to receive at this point. And I felt like it was this instant, almost like a, a crack of a whip, or something coming and saying, like, this is where you're coming for now. This is the journey you're going to take. Looking back on it now. And so for me, there was so many emotions around, like, why is this happening? Who is this person? But it was the one thing that I needed. He was older. He said he had money. He said he could take care of me. It was all those things where you're like, as a woman, you're kind of like, oh, cool, fun. He also had this idea that was building and brewing before I even stepped into this whole like relationship around this fitness. And that was something that I've always been passionate about. So it was exciting. It was liberating. I thought it was like, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Yeah. And I think a lot of times we tend to shy away from the parts of the story that don't make sense, that are the red flags in the very beginning. Yeah. And I will say that from day one, Mr. Perfect was actually Mr. Wrong. Yeah. And I was allowing the behaviors because I liked what he had with this fitness industry, this business. And I was going to be able to step in and be the face of the name and all the things. And so it was kind of an exciting time, but yet I knew that deep down inside, it was full of lies, manipulation, cheating, deceit, lots of other things were happening. And even sometimes when I think back on it, it makes me wonder what the heck I in my head was thinking. Because when I think back to it, I was just like, it's okay because I was the crazy person. All those other people, they're crazy. They're creating the stories. Mm-hmm. So let's just put the blinders on. So I would put the blinders on, right? And I think that's what a lot of people tend to do in life, is we put the blinders on when we actually need to take the blinders off. And like you mentioned even before, the perspective of everything that's happening around you. And so for me, it was a constant battle between lying and then feeling like it wasn't a lie, to then, oh, it's okay, but it was just this constant tug and pull in all kinds of directions, where for me, at being 24 years old, dating an almost 40-year-old, it was hard for me to have a backbone, or to stand up and say, like, this is not okay. This is not right. And I think I held on to it for all the wrong reasons. And that's the hardest part.
And especially from you saying earlier, that you were looking back to find yourself or get to know yourself, and you realized that you didn't know yourself. And so with you not knowing yourself, how would you know what you should have known in the relationship? How would you know about the red flags? How would you know that, he was going to, lie and manipulate you, because you were looking to feed yourself? Mm-hmm. So being on stage, getting the attention, it was feeding that internal portion of you that you didn't know what it really took in order for it to be fed. And so anything that shined the light on you was going to be good. But what do they say? All love is not good love. All attention is not good attention, right? And you learned that 10 years in a relationship that eventually had you take a huge step with, and I'll let you tell the story to everyone.
Yeah. So, and everybody asks this same question is, oh, did he cheat again? Oh, did he, did you find, all the things. People ask me those questions. And for me, I have to say no. Maybe, maybe there was some things behind the doors that, I just never knew. But for me, I literally had to understand that I was waking up every day with absolutely no trust in myself, no trust in the world, no real will to be courageous to try anything. And I also had this like zero strength. And I remind myself every day that the day that it switched for me is that I decided I didn't want to live that way anymore. And it was not a decision that happened overnight. It wasn't something that just like all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can walk away. It started with just going inward and understanding, like, why are you holding on to this identity? Why are you staying in this relationship thinking that you don't bring any value? The only value in your life right now is this business and this person.
Yeah.
Take yourself out of that position and say, what could be possible?
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was that pivotal moment where I decided enough was enough, and to have the courage and the strength to actually speak up and say, I am done, was the step that I had to take. I had said it before, but it was in such a different manner this time. And it was when I had decided that I could leave with just a backpack and those 3 words pretty much. And I had to be able to say to myself that this is the time. It's never going to be perfect. I'm never going to know what the next best step is. I'm never going to have more strength until I actually take the leap of faith.
Yeah. And, you know, I love that because we don't want to miss that part. You literally left with just the backpack on your back. And I always tell people, you're going to do everything that you're going to do and continue to stay on the hamster wheel until you say enough is enough. And when you say enough is enough, you'll leave with just a backpack. Because you can fight all that you want. Like you said, I would say I am done so many times. But those I am done's were, I am done, are you going to change? I am done, do I really want to leave? I am done, do I really want to give this up? You know, this time was, okay, I have done all that I'm going to do. I've done all that I can do. I have tried, and I am done. And that's when you literally took the words and utilized them correctly and left out of there. How scary was that for you to take that next step?
You know, I think we tend to always play the scary role. We always tend to place this like, or draw this picture, or we tend to create a story. And I think that's with everything in our life. But for me, it was scary because I thought to myself, what's next? But honestly, that question isn't the one that should be the first question. It's not about what's next. It's about how can I?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we overcomplicate the situation to think that we have to know the path in front of us. We have to know the exact location we're going. We have to have all this. Now, I didn't leave with a backpack with nowhere to go. I was lucky enough to have parents who said, please come to us. And so I know some people don't have that. So it wasn't as this, like, I just walked out the door to nowhere land.
Yeah.
I walked out knowing that I was going to find a way out of my mess. And I'm 5 years out of the mess and I'm still dealing with a lot of those things. So sometimes I like to explain that we all tend to think something is so much further than it is, but you also will never know how close it is until you take this step. And so for me, that fear was so there. And that's what I talk about. Fear is never going to dissipate.
Yeah.
But you have to build that strength and courage and trust inside of yourself to say, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And not knowing isn't a death sentence. I
Right.
think a lot of people think that just because I don't know what door is going to open or what road is going to be paved or what perfect path is going to show up, it's a death sentence. And it's actually what is going to give you the most freedom. And I don't want to skip over this part because when you asked me, like, what did that feel like? The moment that I put that backpack on and I walked out thinking he would chase after me or say something, and I got down to my car with no reaction, I pulled away and I instantly felt the power back inside of me.
Yeah.
And it was because I looked at the sky and thought, the sky is blue. I live in the Rocky Mountains, and was like, those are mountains. Those are beautiful. So it was literally like this entire burden or handcuffs that I had literally been wearing, holding myself hostage. Why? Were completely lifted off the moment I put my keys in that ignition and I started to drive away.
Yeah. And that's a humbling moment too,
Yeah.
especially when you've been in that for 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes our pride can keep us in things because we don't want to look as though we're failures.
Mm-hmm.
And then for you to have to go back home to mom and dad,
Yeah.
and thank God that they were there to be that supportive system. But that is another humbling thing to do, because it's like, again, when you say you're done, you're done. Whether if it's have you having to return back home, or you having to be alone, you having
Mm-hmm.
to, announce I'm no longer with that person. Like, it's a whole lot of things that are going on at one time. But at the end of the day, you say, I choose me,
Mm-hmm.
and I choose my peace, and I choose my worth. And now let me go figure out what that actually looks like for me now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the part that most people fail to realize, is that in all reality, just because you're walking away from a relationship or something in your life, you're not alone, because you're going back to yourself. And so a
Yeah.
lot of times you're actually more alone in those relationships than you realize. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a huge part that people really do skip over, is that if you were to look at your life and understand how you're feeling and how you're acting and how all the things just in your life in general are playing out, you know, we skip over that. And it's so hard, because I feel like I skipped over that for so long, and I was afraid, oh, I'll never find love. And who cares about all that stuff?
Yeah.
I think we try to figure out the outcome of what we're leaving before we've even left.
Yeah.
And really what we need to do is we need to leave. And then it's crazy how life really shows up for you on a different level.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I mean, I was going to be alone. Yes, I had my parents, but who wants to live with their parents at 35
Right.
years old? You've built this life and this career, and you've had this moment of like freedom, to then saying I have to go back and live with mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
And I didn't care about that. I just cared about that I wasn't going to feel so empty inside,
Yeah.
because I could come back to myself, and I could come back to the root of my existence, of my
Totally.
parents, who were there to say, like, I will never forget when I spent an evening right before I did it with my parents. And I think both of their chairs, they almost fell off their chairs when I told them I was leaving.
Yeah.
And that to me right there was proof of that they had just been literally holding on for dear life for me to finally claim my own life back.
Yeah. And that's why you felt so empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And when that gave me chills, for one, that you said that. Because as your parents, and the reasoning behind you enduring something for so long, and as your parents were holding on for dear life for you, as you were holding on for dear life yourself, you didn't know that I could have left this at any time.
Yeah.
I could have had the cushion that I needed at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And how scary was it for your parents even to know that you were in such a vice grip with this man? Even if you were telling them or not telling them everything that was going on, but they knew it. And for them to get the relief, for them to to be able to express, like, I know she's an adult woman. I know she's going to do what she wants to do. I know that, but we have to be here for her. And for them to get that release, that had to be one of the biggest joys in their hearts, just to know that you were safe, and
Mm-hmm.
that you were coming home, and that you were going to be able to live out a sustainable life for yourself that you could actually enjoy and appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still, like you said, it kind of still just makes me, it just makes me realize what I also wasn't just allowing or putting myself through, I was putting other people through that care and love about you. And so I think that's another thing that I like to talk about is that our actions and our decisions, not only do they affect us, but they affect other people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's things about that you don't have to. There's a lot of, hairy lines between this whole thing that I might say here, but I just wanted to realize that sometimes when you're making decisions and you're maybe this is the way I should preference this, is that, you're making these decisions and you want people to love you and care for you and understand you. But when you're allowing the behaviors that I was allowing, it was hard for people to care and love about me the way that I should or wanted to have the respect, because they saw that it was not the situation I was supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And no one really can tell you that.
Yeah.
It has to come from within. I believe that 100%, because no matter what my mom would say, or no matter what friends would say, that people would bring up words and say, oh, he's that. And I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And so for me, being so maybe young, dumb, naive, whatever it may be, in all reality, I just am so happy that I actually got to experience a life outside of that life, even with other people, with my family, with my friends, being able to create, like you said in the very beginning, it's this blank canvas. And I think a lot of people think when you say a blank canvas or let's rewrite your story, it's like, well, what about my past? Well, the past isn't going anywhere.
Right.
It's gone. It's not something you can change, but you're able to rewrite your future and you're able to stay in that present moment. And so I think it's really important to say that instead, because I think people sometimes even get confused on, like, when I say I rewrote my entire story.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? And to me, it means that I'm in control. I am the one who is able to make the decisions from here.
Yeah. And you can make the decisions from there because your history gave you the experience. Correct. And that's about rewriting your story. You rewrite your story from what you now know. Because if you didn't need to do that, you wouldn't rewrite anything. You would just keep on going, and it would be a never-ending book with no chapters. It would just be a run-on book. But when you have the experience, that's when you really understand your power. And that's when you understand that I get to pick and choose what I want on this. I get to pick the people who are in my life. I get to pick the people who I confide in. I get to pick my tribe. I get to pick my career. I get to pick what makes me happy. There's all of these things that we understand that it's like I do have a lot more power than I thought that I did. And had it not been for those experiences, I wouldn't have never come into myself. And so you have to be thankful for the experience. You have to be thankful for the history, but rewriting your own story, because we have to think that the story that we've been living all this time has been a conditioned story. This is all I knew about myself. Now I get to know myself. I get to awaken myself, and I get to write the story the way that I want to, in my authenticity. And that's when your life really begins.
Yeah, 100%. I'm thinking just because you said something so potent there, and I think that it's so important to go back to that, because a lot of times we aren't living in our authentic self because we don't even really know what that is. Yeah. And for me, I thought my authentic self is that I was going to be this master instructor and all the things, and and that was the story I had created. And in all reality, it really didn't hold in alignment. And I think a lot of people are like, I don't understand alignment. I don't understand authenticity. I don't understand those things. And really, truly, once you can take that first step away from the chaos and the turmoil and the toxicity and all the things, you start to go, wow, my body was telling me something. My mind was telling me something. Not just people on the external that could see it from the outside. I was living that. And so I think a lot of times we try to push those things. It's just like when we talk about sweeping things under the rug. We tend to sweep those types of emotions under the rug because we're so afraid of trying something else on. And I talk about that all the time. Like, how are you going to know if you don't try something else?
Yeah.
And for me, I
Because
was
it's
like,
all
I'm just going to hold on
unfamiliar.
to that. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
so unfamiliar. And
Yeah.
but why? That's a question. It's like this question of the hour in my brain is for me too, is why do we question the unknown so much, but we don't question the chaos happening in our life?
Yeah.
That's right in front of us. I mean, it's right in front of us day in and day out. The emotions, the actions, the thoughts, the feelings, they're all right there. And we know that we don't like them, but we're so afraid of what could be over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my question.
And I think too, my opinion on that is because the chaos is what's normal. So we're used to the normal. We've been conditioned. The word condition is just going to be a lovely word this for this session,
Yeah.
because we have been conditioned to think that such and such and X, Y, and Z is normal. And so because it's familiar, it's normal. Parents did it, it's normal. Society is doing it, it's normal. And so we know what the pain is going to feel like in the familiar. We know what the thought process is supposed to be like in the familiar, what society thinks about the familiar. But when we go and take the leap on our own, we don't know what that pain is going to look like. We don't know what that other side is going to, the experiences that other side is going to give us. Because even when you cross over to that other side, we're still going to live life. Life is going to life. So some people are just like, hey, I just rather stay over here, what I know versus what I don't know, because I know how to get through that. But this over here, I don't know what it's going to be, and I don't know if I'm going to get through it. But again, it goes back to your whole concept of trusting yourself, trusting the unknown, trusting that you have what it takes to conquer the unknown, or to at least journey through it. Because do we ever really conquer something? That's a question. We get close. We'll never be perfect. I think to say that we conquer it is saying that we're perfect in it, but we get better and better and better. Experience, experience, experience. But you have to go for it.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's so important to say is, for me, trust wasn't trust. Those three words that I've referenced, they weren't things for me. I mean, courage for me was to make it through the day without crying. That was courage. My strength, it's funny because I always say this as kind of a laughing joke, but for me, I was as strong as I've ever been. I was in probably the tonest of shapiest, whatever, fittest, trimmest. So the strength looked like it was there, but on the inside, it was empty. It was gone. It was stripped away. And along with the trust, I mean, when you have trust broken in a relationship, but then you're also breaking your own trust, those three words are the ones that I think people need to carry with so often. It can come down to a simple word. It can come down to a simple action. It can come down to a simple movement, whatever you want to say it. But for me, we don't have to have these things to make the steps.
Yeah.
And I want people to understand that, because a lot of times we think we have to have something before we do something. Or like you said, we have to make it to this other spot in our life to feel like we've conquered it or we've gotten through it. And really, the beauty is in that chaos of stepping out of that stepping out of that comfortable to get uncomfortable, to understand and become aware that the world is so much different when you start to become aware and you start to trust yourself and align with that authenticity and understand what really truly makes you who you are. Then all the other stuff starts to fall into place.
Yeah.
Because you're in such a different alignment with yourself. When we're in this unfamiliarity, it can feel chaotic, but when you're in the familiar chaos, it's the same feeling, but you're just staying stuck. And instead, if you would rather not be there, you just have to take one courageous action towards moving yourself away from that familiar chaos to go to the unfamiliar chaos where the absolute beauty is.
Yeah. And getting comfortable, being uncomfortable with trusting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to make decisions. And decisions are either going to, I mean, everything is trial and error, right? And we just hope that everything is going to turn out the way that we want to. But when you go through something and you're just like, I knew it was right. I thought that, I had all my ducks in a row. I thought that I was in alignment, and it turns out that it wasn't, because of the perspective that you have about the experience. We'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you trusted yourself in order to be in this experience. And then it turns out in a way that you didn't want it to or didn't expect for it to. Then that fear of not trusting yourself settles in. And it's like, how do I make that next move now? Because I don't trust myself to pick the right guy now. I thought he was Mr. Perfect,
Mm-hmm.
So now that I see that he wasn't, how am I going to, do I trust myself to know that I know what I should know about these red flags? But it's the aspect of at least trying. It takes courage to try and fail. It takes, like, people will say, I'm never going to love again, because my heart was broken. And it's like, what did you learn from that, though? What did you, are you looking at it out of the right lens to grasp what you needed to grasp in those moments, so that you can take the experience into the next moment, so that you can probably get a little bit further than you did the last time, you know? And so I think that it's a lot of fear that people operate out of that keeps them hindered. And you kind of lose the zest of life when you want to be so, or have to be so calculated to do the right thing, or to do the right thing in the next thing. It never happens. So either you're going to be stuck, or you're going to always be disappointed.
100%. Yeah. You hit it on the head with the perspective. I think a lot of us, and I talk about this too, is every single thing in our life, or every decision, every experience is not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's feedback. It's feedback to let you know where you're in alignment and when you're not. And so for me, I say this in my keynote, is if you have listened to the radio station or the frequency that you are on, if you take a second, does it sound like that AM static radio?
Yeah.
Or does it sound like that high vibe, that frequency that you truly want to live in? Because if it sounds like the other side, it's time to change it. And the change comes from trust and courage and strength to be able to say, I am so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I am tired of feeling the way that I'm feeling. I want different. Now, I'm going to tell you, it is not unicorns and rainbows on the other side at first.
Yep.
And it still isn't, because like you said, life is going to life. So we're not talking about getting to the destination. We're talking about the journey of life, of how do you go and see, like you said, the perspective of each and every decision that we make. Instead of it being labeled as, oh, I failed. Oh, I didn't do this right. Oh, I have this. Oh, all the things. You get to say, okay, that didn't work out quite right. But like you said, what did I learn? How do I feel from this one experience? Because I'm going to tell you, most oftentimes you're going to feel either proud, or you're going to feel like, man, I could have done it a little better. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to say, I'll never do that again. Yes. And so you get the choice to say, if it's a never again, guess what? You would have never known until you tried. Yeah. It's just like our parents used to say, how do you know you don't like that food if you haven't ever tried it? Well, right. I don't know. It just looks gross. I don't want to do that. So it's the same thing with your life. If it looks gross and feels weird, why don't you try it? You never know. It could be your new frequency.
Yeah. And it could be your authenticity, because again, those things, your surroundings will tell you, I don't like that. I shouldn't try that. That's wrong. I shouldn't express myself like that. I'm supposed to hide this portion of me, which again is that shadow aspect of yourself. Mm-hmm. And here goes your authenticity crying to come out. Your authenticity is really your barometer telling you what's wrong. If something is off and you're not feeling a certain way about it, or the right way about it, most likely authentically in your core is saying, this is not for us, or this is not how you're supposed to respond to this. You're reacting my favorite two words, reaction and response. You're reacting from a conditioned place. Our
Mm-hmm.
authenticity wants to respond to this. So how are we repelling? Are we repelling it or are we inviting it? And that's just what change is. Either you're going to take it head on or you're going to crumble under it, and let it overshadow you. So in everything that you experience, what would you say, being in that relationship and coming out of that relationship, when you were able to really sit back and look at it all, what would you say was exposed out of you from that experience?
Um, wow. I think what was exposed is that I truly knew. This is hard to even say out loud, so I think that's why it's taking me a second. Is that I truly knew from deep down inside, day one, it was the absolute wrong decision that I was making.
Oh, wow.
And when I think about that, and then I spent 10 years, which we can say 10 years, we can say a decade, we could say a lifetime.
Yeah.
I knew from day one into probably at least the first 6 months of that relationship that it was not the one I was supposed to be choosing.
Mm.
But there was also the outside influence, the people, the things that were talked about. You'll never make it. Well, all the things. And then I say, well, I'm going to make it. I'm going to change this person. I'm going to be the one to, he loves me so much. So I think it was really, truly what exposed me is that I truly know deep down inside what is in alignment with me. And I believe that it is in every single one of us. Yeah. Hence the name of all of my things is always the power is within inside of you.
Yeah.
And 99.975% of the time, your intuition is always right. If you have the gut instinct that it doesn't feel good, it's not in alignment, there's something happening, he's doing this, she's doing that, the manipulation behind you in the background, if you have the feeling, sit with it, address it, and understand, because I exposed it in the very beginning, but I also shoved it under the rug.
Yeah.
And just kept going because I felt like that was my place to be.
Yeah. You sacrificed yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you sacrificed yourself for something so deep within you that you were searching for. And again, you didn't even know what you were searching for. You just knew that you had a hole that needed to be filled. And you were like, he has the particles, he has the materials that can fill that, but he didn't have what was going to actually build that foundation. And that was the safety, that was the trust, that was the love, that was the validation. And when we think about all of that, how often do people think that deeply about themselves to know that those are the things that I need? It's not what you're giving me. It's not the attention. What the attention needs, I need to be loved correctly. I need kindness. I need you to see me. I need you to hear me. I need you to genuinely love me and want to be, with me, my person, not because I can be a body to or a face to your business, you know. So with that, your experience, your exposure, your ability to override your intentions, to override your intuition as well. How did that catapult you into your purpose?
So like we already mentioned, I think that the catapulting for me is that I had to experience what I went through, or my story at the time. I believe that because I just said I exposed, or it was exposing, that I didn't really even, I knew it, but I didn't, and I didn't listen. I think for me, my true purpose is to be able to bridge the gap between staying that stuck and unfulfilled to then building that trust and strength and courage to start over. And so for me, if I hadn't have gone through what I went through, and everything happened for me to be able to step in front of people on a stage or on my podcast or when I'm mentoring somebody, this all had to have been put in my life and in my forefront for me to face it all and to grow from it and to learn from it, to then be able to have that experience so that I can help other people. So it catapulted me into this. I want to make an impact in other people's lives. I want to be able to share my story in hopes that it actually helps other people reclaim their entire life. And I say, if you don't have it, if you don't know that you want to reclaim your life, you probably want to sit quiet for a few minutes. Because silence is the loudest noise you have to hear. And oftentimes it is so loud that it is literally telling you you have another higher purpose or you have something to share. There's always something that is going to come out of all of the redirects. And all of the things that are happening in your life is where then you get to say, where do I feel so aligned? Where do I feel as if I can make that impact? And where can I show up in places to ultimately pay back what I went through? And that sounds really weird. It's like, what do you mean paying back? But I don't want people to suffer in silence. I don't want people to feel as if they have to stay in a situation because that's what they chose.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because it's one of those things where I feel like once you've seen it or once you feel it, you can't unsee it. And so it's one of those where it's like, I see it in all these people. I see it in, I'm staying because my kids are in high school. I don't care. Don't do that. I'm staying because of this. Oh, I don't know how to make it on my own. My husband's the breadwinner or whatever the excuses are.
Mm-hmm.
Those excuses are outweighing your entire life being able to be redirected to where you're supposed to be. Yeah. And you might hit bumps and things along the road. Trust me, I still do, but you're able to understand then, why is this happening? What's going on here? And you're able to really pull in from your experiences and say right away, does this feel good or does this not? Yeah. What is the feedback I am receiving? And so for me, it was just, I had to go through that past life of mine. And it sounds weird because I didn't die. I'm still here.
Well, a part of you did.
But that part of me, yes, that it died. It had to die off to be able to reclaim my entire life story and be able to share the way that I am. And that's why I feel as if I'm qualified to get on a stage. I'm qualified to speak on a podcast. I'm qualified to mentor people because I went through a decade long of experience and also a lot of other little things in between. But to know that when you talk to other people, everybody has a very similar situation. Mm-hmm. There's just levels and layers to it that are just different. Our little peels of our onions are just slightly smell a little differently, but there's something out of it that you can understand. It's all about reconnecting with who you are authentically and aligned and really, truly being unapologetic about it. Because when you start to apologize about it, you're not being authentic.
Yeah. And, as you were talking, I was thinking about accountability. When you go through those experiences and when you have to come out and step out on your own, you have to take accountability for yourself. And when people are giving those excuses of, the kids or, I don't know how to take care of myself or what have you, it's because you can blame someone else for being in your mess. But when you come out of it and you make the decision to step into another part of your life, now it's all on you. You can't blame it on anyone else, and so people with these experiences, which we all have, if we understand that we are meant to take accountability for our lives, we are meant to be responsible for our lives. And once we come into that understanding, at that time, we can do the services that we do. We can come and because we've held ourselves accountable. And so we can hold other people accountable to their change. all the while encouraging them to make the change. And that's that thin line where people are just like, I'd rather just be right here. I'd rather just be in my head than to actually take the steps or change the behavior that's going to catapult me into my purpose. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about what you're doing. Like how are your services serving people, and what are the outcomes that you see happening?
Yeah, so I think for me, my main work is all about, like you just said, is having the awareness and also having the responsibility to say, and the accountability. All three of those words are very powerful. So I want you to listen back to that part, because for me, my work is all about showing up as the person that I am, because I've gone through these experiences and I'm able to share from that. So it's about the perspective shifts. It's about the way that we can look at all the things that have happened in our life in a completely different lens. Because if we're not able to do that, then we're always going to stay in that stuck pattern where it's like, well, this is how it is. This is what is happening. I've always had this. I've always attracted this partner. I've always had this. And so my entire world is about awareness. And I do talk about I have like 6 key words that I really don't go off of very often, because it really truly lies in, if you're not aware, you're not alive. And if you're not alive, you're not in your power.
Mm.
And so I talk about, if you're not aware of all the situations, you're not going to live in alignment and alive and all the things that make life happy and more fulfilling. And you're never going to stand in your power. You're always going to be looking at somebody else to tell you, yes, yes, this, all the things about your life, or you're looking for some magic pill, right? And it's not out there. There's no magic pill. You have to be able to forgive the things that have happened in your life. You have to take responsibility for the things that have gone on around you and what you've created, the decisions that you've made. Some are good, bad, right, wrong. All of them don't have to be labeled as anything. Remind yourself they're the feedback. And so it's one of those things that I just talk about until I'm blue in the face, is it's all about becoming aware of what you yourself are allowing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't come from anybody else. Nobody else can tell you that. Nobody else has the feelings that you have. Nobody else has the emotions that you feel. And so I like to talk about that. I am not your average mentor that's going to tell you, I journal, I meditate, I this, I that, and that's what you need to do. Because guess what? I've journaled, I've meditated, I've done this, I've done that, I've done all the things, but some of it doesn't feel good. Some of it really doesn't make me feel alive. And so then you're putting yourself back into the box of not living your true authentic self.
Right.
So you're never going to hear me tell you, Carlise, you have to go and meditate for 5 minutes every day. You have to take a cold shower. That isn't how it goes.
You meet people where they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of my work, and I don't overcomplicate things, because I think we all tend to overcomplicate everything. I still do, so I'm guilty as charged, but really, truly just understanding like 6 simple keywords in your life can absolutely make all of the difference, as long as you are willing to take responsibility and accountability and start to trust yourself when you don't know what the heck is on the other side.
That's it. That's the way of life. That's the story of life, right? Tell us, Maggie, how we can get in touch with you, and if you have any new projects or goals or any accomplishments that's coming up that we should be looking forward to.
Yeah. So thank you. My main source of where you can find me is on my Instagram page, which is powerwithinher.inc. I also have my website, which is powerwithinher.inc. You can find all of the things. And I really, honestly, I have been stepping into this new era of myself of being able to claim some stages and get my voice more heard. And so, honestly, the best thing I can say is that when you have something as big as a dream, don't ever downplay it and absolutely say it out loud so that other people can watch you and see you step into that person that you have been dying to step into. And so for me, it's all about just being able to create stages, be able to be on stages, and also truly just share my voice through my Instagram page around you have to be your true authentic self and you have to be unapologetic. And when you can do that, miracles will absolutely start showing up in your life, but you also have to take the blinders off and look at all of the perspectives that are right in front of your face.
Yeah. And did you hear that, everybody? She said, say it out loud.
Yeah.
So say it
Declare it.
loud,
Yeah.
and I love that you said that because we live in a society where people are like, don't tell people your dreams. Don't tell people that you're going to do this. Don't, but you're going to do it anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and you give people the power when you think that they can take something from you.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we live in a world that tries to always put you in some sort of box, like you said, say it out loud because you believe in yourself, you're trusting in yourself, you're trusting in the process, and you're the one who has to take the steps in order to make it happen. So I love that you said that. I love
Yeah.
it. Let's see, anything else you want us to know before we wrap up?
I just think I always like to end everything is that you are worthy, you are deserving, and you are more than enough to create the life that you have always dreamed of and desire, because what you desire, you deserve. And that is basically the moral of the story.
Awesome. Well, Maggie, thank you for coming into the shadow box and sharing your time with us and being transparent and being vulnerable and telling us your story. Because believe me, it's going to reach everyone that it needs to reach. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do so.